and thinking. Now, many of you will remember this video, KONY 2012. This came out in March 2012. It was a video about the war in Central Africa and the Lord's Resistance Army, which of course forces children to fight in its brutal militia. And the video was a call to action, a call to find and bring to justice the warlord Joseph Kony. The group behind it is called Invisible Children. And within a few hours of the release of this video, KONY 2012 became the fastest viral video in history. And that record still stands, by the way. I remember at the time I was hosting All Things Considered, and one of my production assistants just out of college came to our morning meeting and he said, "There is something on Facebook and it's going to blow up. All of my friends are posting this. It's going to be all over the place by the end of today." So I went and watched this video, and I was instantly taken in. I mean, when does a 30-minute video go viral, right? When does that happen? I mean, you know, without any cats in the video, by the way. It was just 30 minutes of great content. Now, I had never heard of Invisible Children, and neither had any of my colleagues in the newsroom. And so we put in a call to the organization to interview the young man behind this video. His name is Jason Russell. I knew nothing about him. We booked an interview with him for later in the week, and that was it. But as the day wore on, mainstream journalists started to ask questions about the group. Who were they? Who was behind them? How does an unknown group all of a sudden capture the world's attention so quickly, having had no mainstream presence? The scrutiny and the pressure on the group and the criticism was intense. Were they arming African soldiers to fight the LRA? Was this a scam? Did they have a secret agenda? Were they naive? That pressure began to weigh on Invisible Children, and especially the creator of this video, Jason Russell. Many of you will remember Jason's very public breakdown just a few days after the release of that video. And so because of so much uncertainty, we actually canceled our interview with Jason. Much of the mainstream press concluded that Invisible Children was a flash in the pan that got lucky with a viral video, and they moved on. In our arrogance, we could not comprehend the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Invisible Children had laid the groundwork for that video nearly a decade earlier. Now, Invisible Children isn't without controversy, but the story of the group is so much more complicated than a one-off viral video. And it actually began 10 years earlier in March of 2003, when Jason Russell and two friends from film school decided to go to Africa to shoot a documentary about Sudan. By chance and circumstance, they were diverted to Congo, right in the middle of one of the continent's longest-running conflicts, and there they encountered hundreds of children sleeping in bus stations, terrified at the prospect of being kidnapped and forced to become child soldiers. And it was on that trip when Jason and Bobby and Laren, who you see in this photo, they met a young boy who witnessed his own brother's death. He was a sensitive boy, and his only dream was to become a lawyer. And that night, Jason made a promise to that boy. He said, "You will not be forgotten." And upon their return to the US, these three filmmakers made a decision that would change their lives. It would change the lives of thousands of African children and thousands of American teens. And that decision was to found Invisible Children. They took their footage, they made a powerful film, and they tried to get it into every single film festival. These were filmmakers, they were professionals, they were very good at what they do. Sundance, Tribeca, Toronto, you name it. Not a single festival accepted their documentary. Now remember, this is long before YouTube, this is long before video was easily shared on the web. So they started to brainstorm. And with help from friends, they decided that they were going to take that film and they were going to screen it themselves at high schools all across the country. They started to make cold calls to schools. They contacted every single teacher they knew, friends of teachers. They scraped together a bit of money from friends and family. And over the next 6 years, they took that film around the country and they began to build a movement and an organization from the roots up. At the end of the film, there were no credits. It didn't say this film was made by Jason Russell and it just said this. It said, the story is not over yet. We need one of the following from you: your time, your talent, or your money. And slowly and strategically, and with a shared sense of purpose, with focused leadership and a clear narrative, these young men built an organization made up of thousands of volunteers, young people, high school students, with the will and the passion and the naivete to believe that they could end this conflict and bring Joseph KONY to justice. They amassed hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, on Facebook. They encouraged their volunteers to collaborate, to take ownership and control over their part of the mission. They invited young people to join them at their headquarters in San Diego to stuff envelopes, go door to door, to do the hard work that was required to make a difference. And none of this was ever in the New York Times. None of this was on CNN. None of this was, dare I say, on NPR, because it was all happening under the radar screen. And so when this team from Invisible Children launched KONY 2012, they had already built up the foundation, a movement that was ready to spread this message in ways none of us had anticipated. And that video didn't go viral because the group was lucky. It went viral because hundreds of thousands of young people were waiting for that moment to spread the word. And I don't believe that it's an understatement to call Invisible Children the most powerful millennial-led movement to date. And on the ground in Central Africa, they have set up radio stations where they inform child soldiers how to defect. They've dropped hundreds of thousands of leaflets into the dense jungles with instructions telling child soldiers how they can escape. They've helped achieve a 90% reduction in LRA killings between 2010 and 2013, the rehabilitation and return of more than 200,000 displaced persons to their homes, and a law signed by President Obama in the Oval Office last year authorizing a $5 million reward leading to the capture of Joseph KONY and his top 5 lieutenants. One of those people in the room that day was Ben Kesey. He's here today in this room, standing with the president while he signed that law. And all this happened because Invisible Children gathered around a shared mission with a shared sense of purpose. It was led by highly talented men and women, young men and women. They created a robust organization of young volunteers and activists around the country and the world, and they had and they continue to have a clear and powerful narrative.